Level 1. The distant cousin. You share a last name with someone worth $38 billion. You've met him exactly 4 times. A wedding in 2009 where you were seated at a table so far from the main event you couldn't read the name cards. A funeral in 2014 where he arrived by helicopter, stayed 40 minutes, and left before the reception. A Christmas in 2019 where his security team swept the house before he came in and your aunt spent the whole evening straightening cushions. And a graduation ceremony in 2022 where he shook your hand, said good work, and you later realized he thought you were someone else. You work in supply chain logistics. You drive a 6-year-old Civic with a busted AC. You live in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate who works nights, which means the apartment is never fully quiet and never fully empty. Your life is normal in the way that 97% of lives are normal. Manageable debt, occasional anxiety, a gym membership you use inconsistently. Then a financial journalist publishes a family tree piece. Your name appears in paragraph 14 as a footnote. By Tuesday your LinkedIn has 400 new connection requests. A podcast reaches out asking if you'd be a guest on an episode called Living Adjacent to Billionaire Blood. Someone on Reddit posts your employer history under a thread titled, How Does the Rest of the Family Live? And 40 people debate your net worth based on your job title. The strangest part is the assumptions. Coworkers start treating you differently, not with envy exactly, more like suspicion, like you've been hiding something this whole time. A manager jokes that you probably don't really need the year-end bonus. Your landlord raises your rent by $300 the next lease cycle and you can't prove those two things are connected, but you also can't stop thinking about it. Every December, a wire transfer appears in your account from an LLC name you don't recognize. Last year it was $22,000. The memo line says annual distribution. You've never signed anything. You've never asked anyone about it. You spend it on things you needed, a new laptop, a dental procedure you'd been putting off, 3 months of credit card balance, and you feel grateful and vaguely ashamed in a ratio you can't quite measure. You are not wealthy. You are adjacent to wealth in the way that a person standing outside a restaurant in the rain is adjacent to a warm meal. Level 2. The in-law. You married into the family 2 years ago. Before the engagement, your experience of money was upper middle class normal, 2 professional incomes, a mortgage you could manage, vacations to places that required a flight but not a private one. You thought you understood wealth. You did not understand wealth. The engagement party was at their smaller property, which turned out to be a 16,000 square foot house in Connecticut with a staff of 9 and a chef who had a Michelin star before going private. The wedding itself had a security briefing. Not a coordinator telling vendors where to park, an actual briefing, with a threat matrix, because the groom's father's public profile generates credible risk assessments. You found this out the week before the ceremony and spent the rehearsal dinner trying to decide if you were impressed or terrified. You were both. Now you live in a world that operates on a different physics. There's a family office, a team of 12 people whose entire job is managing the family's financial and legal affairs. When you want to renovate your kitchen, the contractor quote goes to the family office first. When you travel internationally, there's a protocol document. When your spouse's father makes a statement in the press about anything, economics, politics, a company he's investing in, your phone fills with texts from people asking if you have inside information. The prenup you signed is 63 pages. It includes a social media clause, a geographical restriction during separation proceedings, and a confidentiality provision that your own attorney said was the most comprehensive she'd seen outside of celebrity contracts. You signed it because you were in love and because the alternative was walking away from the person you wanted to spend your life with. You don't regret it. But some mornings you read a paragraph of it and feel the specific weight of having agreed to something you didn't fully understand at the time. The family likes you. You're reasonably certain of this. But there's a group chat among the siblings that you're not in, board meetings your spouse attends where you're not mentioned, and a specific silence that descends at the dinner table when the conversation approaches money in ways that involve you. You are family. You are also, clearly, not quite family. Both things are true simultaneously and nobody will ever say it out loud. Level 3. The sibling. You grew up in the same house, went to the same schools, had the same arguments about who left dishes in the sink. You remember your brother before he was anything, Before the company, before the cover stories, before the word visionary started appearing next to his name in places people actually read. You remember him at 14, convinced he could build a go-kart engine from parts he ordered online, and failing, and sulking about it for 3 weeks. He is now worth $19 billion. You are worth $40 million, which makes you richer than almost anyone reading about you, and still the one journalists describe as the other sibling in the second paragraph of profiles that are technically about you. You run a hospitality group, 4 hotels, 2 restaurant concepts, a real estate portfolio that your team built from nothing over 11 years. It's genuinely successful. It employs over 300 people. Last year you won an industry award for sustainable operations that you were actually proud of, the kind of proud that doesn't need anyone else to validate it. The award was mentioned in 1 trade publication and 1 local paper. The same week, your brother's company announced a new product and it was covered by every outlet on earth, including 3 that don't normally cover business news. He offers to invest every 18 months or so. The amounts are always generous, more than fair, more than market rate, the kind of offer that would solve problems you didn't know you had yet. You've said no 4 times. Each time, you tell him you want to build it independently. Each time, he nods and says he respects that and the subject closes cleanly. What you don't tell him is that accepting feels like admitting that everything you've built is smaller than it looks. Which it might be. But it's yours in a way that nothing with his name attached to it could be. Your children go to the same school as his. They're friends with his kids, which is wonderful and also occasionally difficult in the specific way that only a parent can understand. Watching your daughter come home from her cousin's birthday party describing a performance by an artist whose name she isn't allowed to say, and trying to explain that different families have different lives in a way that sounds like wisdom instead of defensiveness. At family dinners, you are the success story. You are also always, quietly, the lesser success story. This is not something anyone says. It is something everyone knows. Level 4, the childhood friend. You met in 6th grade when he moved into the neighborhood and immediately started an argument with your science teacher about a hypothesis she'd marked wrong. You defended him because you also thought she was wrong, and somehow that became the beginning of a 26-year friendship. You were at his first apartment, a studio with a card table for a desk and an Ethernet cable running across the floor because the Wi-Fi wasn't reliable enough for what he was working on. You lent him $4,000 once that he paid back in 3 weeks without mentioning it. You told him the first version of his company's product was ugly and he should hire a designer before showing anyone else. He hired a designer. He never let you forget that the original product became the one thing people now cite as a design landmark. He is worth $23 billion. You are a partner at a mid-sized law firm. You are by any reasonable measure successful. You are also, in the specific geometry of this friendship, the one who stayed normal. You're invited to everything. The foundation galas, the Super Bowl box, the birthday trips to places that require a charter. You go, because the friendship is real and the experiences are extraordinary. But there's a shape to it that has become more visible over the years. You're invited as a guest. You're never involved in the planning. When you suggested once that the 2 of you go somewhere low-key, just the 4 of you, your families, a rented house somewhere without staff, it took 3 weeks to schedule because his team had to assess the location first. The trip was wonderful. It was also nothing like the low-key thing you'd imagined. He pays for everything. Every dinner, every trip, every incidental expense, automatically, without discussion, because the alternative would require him to pretend that the amounts mean something to him that they don't. You understand this. You also can't reciprocate, which means the balance of the friendship has shifted in a direction that can't be fixed by splitting a check. Gratitude and resentment are not opposites. You've learned this. Forbes published a piece last year about his inner circle. You read it twice looking for your name. It wasn't there. You've decided you don't care about this. You're still deciding. Level 5, the child. You are 16. Your problems are real problems, the specific, consuming problems of being 16. And they are also problems that exist inside a context that most people will never experience and cannot fully imagine. You go to a school where tuition is $62,000 a year and nobody considers this unusual because everyone there is in the same situation. The cafeteria has a build-your-own sushi station. The athletic facilities are better than most universities. You have a college counselor whose other clients include the children of foreign heads of state, and she's been working on your application narrative since you were 14. None of this feels extraordinary to you because you have no baseline that would make it feel extraordinary. This is just school. Your 16th birthday party was photographed by someone who sold the images to a tabloid. The comments on the article called you spoiled, disconnected, a symbol of everything wrong with inherited wealth. You read them because you couldn't stop yourself and then spent 2 weeks wondering if they were right. Your therapist, who specializes in high-net-worth adolescent psychology, which is a thing that exists, said the comments were about projection, not you. You believe her. Mostly. You cannot go on a date without your father's security team running a background check on the other person. Your last relationship ended when your boyfriend of 3 months realized he couldn't post anything about you on social media due to the family's media protocol. He wasn't wrong to be frustrated. You weren't wrong to follow the rules. It just ended, which is how most relationships at 16 end, but with a layer of structural absurdity on top that made it harder to process. People your age want to be you. You can see it in every interaction outside your immediate social circle. The way conversations shift, the way people recalibrate, the way a certain kind of attention arrives that has nothing to do with who you actually are. You've started becoming careful in ways that 16-year-olds shouldn't have to be careful. You're good at reading rooms. You're good at figuring out what people want from you before they ask. You're not sure if this is a skill or a loss. Level 6. The spouse. You met at a charity event 12 years ago when he was worth $400 million and you were a senior architect with a firm that had just won a major commission. You were not looking for a billionaire. You were looking for a decent conversation at an event you'd been obligated to attend. You found both, which is how most things that change your life actually happen. Not dramatically, not on purpose. You understood money before you met him. You did not understand what it means to be an institution, which is different from being wealthy in the same way that a river is different from a flood. $400 million is a life of profound comfort and complete freedom. $14 billion is a different category of existence entirely. The math doesn't scale. The life doesn't scale. Your household has a staff of 21 people, several of whom have government security clearances. Your calendar is managed by a woman with a graduate degree in operations management who coordinates with advanced teams before any trip involving public exposure. When you travel, local authorities are notified in some cities. This is not a status symbol. It is a logistical necessity that took you years to stop finding surreal. You run the Family Foundation, which distributes $120 million annually to initiatives across global health, education, and climate infrastructure. This is real work, consequential work, the kind of work that changes things in ways you can track across decades. It is also work that gets described in press coverage as your husband's philanthropic legacy, with your name appearing in the 3rd paragraph if it appears at all. Every public appearance is an editorial decision. What you wear is analyzed for statements about wealth you weren't making. Which charities you attend signals political positions you may or may not hold. When your husband says something controversial, and he does, with the specific confidence of someone who has never had to carefully manage the impression he makes, you are the one on the phone with donors, with politicians, with other spouses who form your actual peer group, doing the quiet maintenance work that keeps things from fracturing. You love him. The marriage is real in all the ways that matter. But you exist inside a structure now that is larger than both of you, and sometimes late at night you think about the woman who went to a charity event not looking for anything in particular, and you wonder what her life would have looked like. Probably smaller. Probably easier. Probably something she'd have been fine with. Level 7. The active family member. You're 32 and you run the family's media and content portfolio. 12 properties across digital publishing, production, and distribution, with a combined valuation your father's office updates quarterly in a spreadsheet you have read-only access to. You have an MBA. You spent 3 years at a private equity firm before joining the family business, specifically because you wanted something real on your resume that had nothing to do with the last name. It worked. Partially. The PE firm hired you on merit. They also took your meetings faster than they took anyone else's. Your days are meetings, decisions, and the permanent awareness that every decision you make is being observed by people who've known you since you were in elementary school and have formed opinions about your capability that may or may not be updatable by evidence. Your father's longtime executives are respectful and mostly competent and constitutionally unable to tell you when they think you're wrong. This is a problem you've tried to solve by hiring people who didn't know the family before they knew you. It helps, imperfectly. The media covers your moves like sports commentary, win, loss, strategic genius, nepotism, depending on the outcome and the outlet. When an acquisition performs well, the headline is about your father's empire expanding. When an initiative underperforms, the headline includes the phrase "the founder's child." You have read enough of these articles to recognize the formula and not enough of them to stop reading. Your actual performance is good. You know this because the numbers are good and the numbers don't care whose child you are. But the narrative about your performance exists separately from the performance itself, in a layer of public interpretation you can see but can't access or correct. You have a mentor outside the family, a retired media executive who calls you once a month and tells you things your family won't, which is the most professionally valuable relationship you have. You don't talk about her publicly. You're protective of anything that's genuinely yours. Level 8. The successor. You are 38. Everyone knows what you're being groomed for and nobody says it, including you. Your father is 71 and healthy and has no intention of stepping back. But the board has begun the transition planning, and the transition planning has your name in it, and that document exists, and you have read it. You have been preparing for this your entire professional life in the way that some preparation is intentional and some is just the gradual accumulation of proximity to a thing you cannot avoid. You have an undergraduate degree in economics, an MBA, 7 years running a division, and the specific institutional knowledge that only comes from having been in rooms that matter since you were young enough that people forgot to send you out. The pressure is not the work. The work is hard but manageable. The pressure is the scale of what failure means, not for you personally, but for the 80,000 people employed across the enterprise, for the communities tied to the business's operations, for the industries where the family's capital has become structurally important. You are not just running a company. You are stewarding a system that has consequences for people who will never know your name and have no say in how you perform. Your father built this from a single operating business 40 years ago with a specific set of instincts that were right for a specific set of conditions that no longer exist. You respect this enormously. You are also aware that the instincts that built the thing are not necessarily the instincts that sustain or evolve it. Having this conversation with your father is the most delicate ongoing negotiation of your professional life. You are not always winning it. Your marriage is solid in the way that things that have survived real stress become solid, not effortlessly, but genuinely. Your children see you more on weekends now than they did 3 years ago because you made a decision and held it. This is the thing you're most privately proud of. It doesn't appear in any profile about you. Level 9. The core. You are 66 years old and worth $41 billion. And the most honest thing you can tell someone about what that means is that it stopped feeling like a number a long time ago and started feeling like a responsibility that never ends. You built the first company at 29 with borrowed capital and a product that almost no one thought would work. You were right and they were wrong, and that fact shaped something in you. A specific confidence in your own judgment that has been correct often enough to be useful and incorrect often enough to be dangerous. And you have spent 4 decades learning to tell the difference, and you are still not always sure. Presidents have called you for advice. Central bank governors have been in your conference room. Your name attached to a sector affects how that sector prices itself. This is power in a form that textbooks describe but cannot fully convey. Not authority, exactly, more like gravity. A pull that changes the behavior of things around you without requiring you to do anything at all. Your children are capable adults who live under the specific shadow of having a parent whose achievements are the first sentence of every story anyone tells about them. You have tried to give them room to build their own things. You have not always succeeded. The structural advantages your name provides are not something you can remove from their lives by wanting to. They are ambient, invisible, everywhere. Your spouse has built something real and consequential through the foundation, and you are aware, in the way that you are aware of many things you don't say, that the public attribution of that work has been consistently wrong in ways that have cost her something. You've had this conversation. You'll have it again. Late at night, In the study of the house you've lived in for 20 years, not the largest property, the one that feels most like home, you think about the version of your life where you stayed smaller. Where the first company remained a single operating business. Where the name meant something locally but not globally. Where your children could walk through an airport like anyone else. You don't know if that would have been a better life. You know it would have been a different one. But the decision was made at 29 by someone who no longer exists, and the consequences of that decision are the world you and everyone around you now live inside. You are not just wealthy. You are a fact. And facts don't get to wonder whether they should have been something else. They simply are, and then they aren't, and what remains afterward is the question of whether it mattered. It mattered. You think it mattered. You're still deciding.